Well, YouTube, it's Christmas Eve 2024. The days came to an end here at Nixon's Garage, and I thought I'd make you a video about making transmission lines. I set up the camera and I ran it through, and when I got all the way done, I found that I had kind of cut my head off. But the center of the screen is still the action of building the lines. I'm going to go ahead and put it out here for you to see it. I hope you can learn a little bit from it, and please forgive me for my camera angle. Y'all have a good night. Enjoy the video. Good evening, YouTube. It's Rick Nixon from Nixon's Garage, working on that 59 Buick Electra 225 rat rod. Tonight, we're working on transmission cooler lines. I thought I'd show you how that works. There's a lot of different ways to build transmission cooler lines. You can order pre-made steel units. They come nice and straight, come with nuts on both ends. They're already double flared on both ends. And then you can bend them into shape. Another option is to buy transmission line in a roll and cut off the piece you need, straighten it out, bend it to fit, slide on the nuts, and flare the ends. Obviously, there's not much to show in using ones that are pre-made, except if you wanted to sit and watch me bend those all out. Instead, I thought I'd show you how we double flare our brake lines to fit the car. Now, this has got a 700 transmission, and it's got a Ford Mustang radiator. Both of those happen to use 5/16 fittings. So we have 5/16 fair line, we have some 5/16 flare line nuts, and we have a flaring tool. So we're going to use the cutting tool, cut us off a piece of this line, and we'll bend it up a little bit and flare it out. This is made by Blue Point. You can probably buy it in several other brands, but that's what this one is. As you can see, it does a pretty good job of cutting the line. One of the things you'll run into when you cut your line is sometimes it'll put a little burrs on the end of it. So one of the tools you'll need will be a flat file. Take that flat file and just take a few seconds to knock the burrs off the end of there. It'll make it easier to work. The next thing you need to do is clean out the end. As you can see right here, it kind of bent it in just a little bit in the end of the tube. So we'll take the square end of the file and shove it in there, kind of twist it around and knock off that burr. Back in the good old days when they made these out of, when I got my first one of these, had a little flip deal on it here. It had a file and a point. And you could take that point, shove it in there, spin around, clean that burr out, take the file that off. Once you knock that burr out of the inside, we gotta file that again. Make sure we get all them burrs off. Those are gonna be important when we get to the flaring part. Now this particular piece of line, we got a little curve in it, so we're just going to try to straighten it out a little bit. make it look a little straighter. Now, obviously when you buy it in a roll, it's going to be really hard to get that line really straight again. As you can see, I still got some curves there on the end. If it was longer, we could do a better job. But this will work for what we're trying to do tonight. The reason I'm showing this is because this is where we're at on the 59 Buick rat rod. We've mounted the radiator. Now we're building transmission cooler lines. This is a bender. This one here is, well, this one came from Snap-on. I got a handful of Blue Point Snap-on tools, but I think you can buy one similar to it in other brands. The nice part about it is it's easy to use and it gives you a little bit of strength. So when you're bending, it's got different size grooves. You fit your groove in here, you line it up with 0 right here, and as you bend it, you can see how many degrees you made that bend. Now, let's say that you've already got a line that's already got a flare nut on it. If it's right at the end, you can put your flare line on there like that. If you need it even shorter, what I suggest is you bend the line, cut the end of it off, and then flare it. You got to be careful though, because the flaring tool needs a little room to work. So to make this more interesting, we're going to go ahead and put a 90-degree bend in this line. As you can see, that bender does a pretty nice job bending the line without crimping it in the bends. Now you notice I've already got that nut on there. Well, that's really important because that nut won't slide past the bend. So if I had had that nut on at the other end, now I bent the line, now I can't get the line past the bend. So make sure you know where your nuts are. This is my flaring tool. It's made by Mac Tool Company. Not that I get paid anything to tell you about it, it just happens to be Mac. And it's a hydraulic flaring tool, and it's made for doing several different kinds of lines. Tonight we're going to do a double flare, which uses stones that look like this for 5/16 line. We're also going to use this inverted flare adapter in the machine, because what we want to do is we want to take those sides of that tube and bend them like this. Bend them like this. That's the first step of the double flare. After we've got them bent like this, we'll put a cone in, we'll bend those down, and then we'll have 2 layers right here. That'll all be inside that nut, so when you tighten that down, it'll smash that and make a positive seal. This is the hydraulic flaring tool. We're going to take these 2 stones, set them inside here with this side facing the die. Then we're going to take our steel line. We're going to shove it in this line, in this right here. And we're going to shove it through until it's flush with the face of these dies. Now we got to get that good and tight so that it holds that line from sliding. I hope you can see now the line is flush with the end of that. Now we'll take this die, which has a little nipple, and we'll line it up to go into the line like so. Good job, huh? Once we have it lined up, we'll screw this down in here, making sure that nipple begins into the line. We'll tighten down our little hydraulic screw here, and we'll pump this down. As it goes in there, it's going to bend that line like I showed you. We'll release and take this back out. Normally I wouldn't take this line out of there and show you what that looks like, but I probably should, since I'm trying to show you how we do it. So we'll take this and loosen this up. We'll slide this out of here. This way you can see what the first step of that looks like. As you can see, it's folded over, but not pushed down in the middle. It's got an upward out and an upward up right here. The nut will now slide right up to the back side of that. Really nice. Now this line here is some coated material, and it's not really my favorite because the nuts kind of bind on it a little bit and don't move as smooth as possible. Give me a second here. We'll shove this back in here and do the next step. Again, we got to make sure this is really tight because we don't want that line moving while we're trying to bend on it. Now we're going to take the piece called the cone. This is a cone. As you can see, it's shaped like a cone. We'll shove that down in here. We'll screw the jack back into place, guiding it into the center of what we did. Once it gets into place, we'll tighten down the adjustment screw, pump a handle a few times, and release. Now, we should have a very nice double flare. I like to take my little flat file, kind of knock down some of this right here so that my nut will slide on it a little easier. Then we slide our nut up there, and now you can see it spins really good. This is a nice double flare for a transmission line. Now that'll screw right into the transmission. When it tightens down, it'll mash that inside there, and it'll make a good positive seal, at the transmission. We'll do the same thing at the other end for the radiator. Now obviously this line here is not going to do all that. I just was trying to demonstrate how that's done. Now let's say we made a mistake here and we forgot to put our nut on. A lot of people don't know about some of the grooves in this tool, but if you look right here, it's got a groove. Now you want to cut that off, but you don't want to lose very much. You can set that right in that groove just like that. Set that clamp, set that cutter down in there. We're going to cut off just a very little. Now we just cut off just a little bit instead of having to cut off a whole bunch more. That may or may not come in handy to you, but that's why that groove is in the wheel of that cutting tool. I know this isn't a very exciting video, but you know, not every part of building a super cool rat rod is a super cool job. Building transmission lines is actually just a little bit frustrating. Now mind you, we do the same process, to build fuel lines. If you want steel fuel lines from the front of the car to the back of the car going from the gas tank, you bend them to follow the frame rails, then you flare them on both ends, and you can do that first step of the double flare to give it a little bit of a barb, so you can slide rubber hose on there and put a clamp on. It gives it a little more to grab a hold of. You can also put that double flare on there for if it's going to screw into a fitting. We do the same thing for brake lines, only the fittings are a little bit smaller. This is what the double flare coupler looks like on the inside and the outside. This is the flare line for 3/16 fuel line, brake line, which is pretty common. And this machine will do that also. The next size up will be 1/4 inch. You'll find some cars that use disc brakes on the front will have 3/16 lines running to the front and 1/4 inch line running to the back. Once again, the process is exactly the same. You just use different size stones. 1/4 inch stones. We can do with this set 3/16, 1/4 inch, 5/16, 3/8, and 1/2 inch. This machine will also do push connect fittings for GM products. It'll also do metric brake lines for a double flare. We can do 475. Let's see, what size is that? 475, 6mm, 8mm, and 10mm. Once again, and that would be for a metric bubble flare. It works slightly different. It makes that tube go like this, and that's all the further you do it. Then the nut comes up against the bottom of there, the bottom of here, and this fits against the fitting inside. I haven't done a lot of bubble flare, but I've done a few, and well, it works pretty good. The other thing this can do is GM fuel line disconnect fittings. It does 1/2 and 5/16 fuel line quick disconnect fittings. Anyway, that's what we use around Nixon's Garage to do bubble flare or double flaring. Today we built a brake line for a Chevy truck. It was 1/4 inch, run for the rear, and I ran it, and it goes from along the frame rail between the gas tank and the frame rail, runs back to the back, goes into a T-intersection that feeds the two rear wheels. It rusted out. That's what we have to deal with around here. You know, we work on them old cars. And it rusted out, so we took it loose at the T-fitting at the rear, took the tubing cutter, cut it off in front of the gas tank, fed a new piece of line through there so we didn't have to take the gas tank down, and then did a compression, a double, we flared the end of the old line, flared the end of the new line, and using one of these unions and two nuts. So we did a union and a nut there. I don't know, I might have another nut. Yep, whoop, there we go, two nuts. Nope, I don't have any more of that size. Anyway, so then the new line screws into the union. The union screws onto the old line, tighten it all down. The double flare seals up, bleed the brakes out, and away we go. These old Chevy trucks, them old Chevy trucks, you know, that one was an OBS style. They seem to rust out those brake lines in behind that fuel tank there. Anyhow, I wanted to come to you and show you a little bit of what's going on with the rat rod here. And this is what we're doing now. We're getting some transmission lines bent up. Excuse me. I will get the lines bent up and installed, and the next time you come around, those will be done and we'll do something different. Thanks for being my friend on Facebook, and thanks for subscribing to my YouTube channel, and I hope you all have a Merry Christmas. It's Christmas Eve. I think I'm going to go home and, well, I better go wrap a present for Marie. I'm pretty confident she deserves it. And well, we'll get ready for a day of Christmas tomorrow. Thanks for watching, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon. Good night. Merry Christmas.